Good morning and welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Society of Albany. My name is Reverend Sam Trumbore and I'll be leading the service this morning with support from Leah Purcell and Randy Rosette. Our musicians will be Elena Karpov, Randy Rosette, and Chris Jensen. Before we begin, please check to make sure your microphone is muted. Please also be mindful of your speech while on Zoom, as microphones have a way of getting accidentally unmuted. This will minimize any disruption in our service. Thanks so much for your cooperation. This is now the time of transition from ordinary time to sacred time. If you are outside, allow the fresh air, the sun and sky, the trees and grasses to invite you to find the slower rhythm of the natural world. If you're inside, look to the green life in your home oxygen generators and carbon dioxide absorbers. Look to them to remind you of the slower rhythm of the natural world. If you are inside and see no life around you, bring to your mind's imagination a serene green landscape that calms you, reminds you, and invites you to find the slower rhythm of the natural world. Let this be for you a quiet place, away from the din that can be your sanctuary for the next hour. Zoom will present to you a frame to hold the representations, sounds, music, song, poetry, and prose to lift your heart, broaden your mind, and move you to do justice in the world in the service of building beloved community. While we cannot be physically present together this morning, we can make sacred space together. May this be holy and sacred time for each of us as we join together in the celebration of life. And our prelude this morning will be an improvisation on congas by composer and musician Matt Meyer. let us light our chalice with the words that you'll see on the screen, if you can repeat them with me. Welcoming all free seekers of truth and meaning, we gather to excite the human spirit, to inspire its growth and development, to respond morally and ethically to a troubled world, and to sustain a vital and nurturing religious community. And we'll be singing "The Earth is Our Mother," a Native American melody of songs for earthlings, arranged by Elena Karpov. Hope you enjoy it.
Our mother, we must take care of her. The earth is our mother, we must take care of her. Hey young, oh young, hey young, young. Hey young, oh young, hey young, young. Her sacred ground we walk upon, with every step we take. Her sacred ground we walk upon, with every step we take. Hey young, oh young, hey young, young. Hey young, oh young, hey young, young. The earth is our mother, she will take care of us. The earth is our mother, she will take care of us. Hey young, oh young, young. Hey young, oh young, hey young, young. The sky is our father, we will take care of him. The sky is our father, we will take care of him. Hey young, oh young, hey young, young. Hey young, oh young, hey young, young. The sea is our sister, we will take care of her. The sea is our sister, we will take care of her. Hey young, oh young, hey young, young. Hey young, oh young, hey young, young. The forest is our brother, we will take care of him. The forest is our brother, we will take care of him. Hey young, oh young, hey young, young. Hey young, oh young, hey young, young. The earth is our mother, we must take care of her. The earth is our mother, we must take care of her. Hey young, oh young, hey young, young. Hey young, oh
We're waiting for the little signal to show up that we're on Facebook. It's coming. It's coming, I hope. This is the mystery of our challenge. Nope, we're not ready for that. Come back. Well, while we're getting the there's is it, nope, is Facebook there? Not yet. Okay. Well, let's just jump into the opening words then. Just keep going. So, Columbus Day, traditionally celebrated on the second Monday of October, is fallen out of favor in Unitarian Universalist congregations. A closer examination of Columbus's expositions reveals his murderous cruelty in relation to indigenous peoples. This year is an important year to reflect on indigenous peoples and what happened 400 years when the Mayflower arrived with pilgrims seeking a place to build a new Jerusalem. While the first decades were friendly, they were followed by an increasing immigration of Puritans wanting to settle in the same area. Tensions grew and grew until the King Philip's War, and that war routed the indigenous populations. At our Unitarian Universalist General Assembly this past June, we passed an action of an immediate witness, an AIW, as they're called, to remember the harms done to indigenous peoples since that landing at Plymouth Rock. One way to address that harm is to stop erasing the memory and history of indigenous peoples who were here first. They haven't gone away. Many still live here. One way to reverse this erasure is by honoring the indigenous people who lived where our congregation's building sits at the corner of Robin and Washington in Albany. Those people were and are the Mohicans, A preferred over O, not Mohicans, Mohicans. Before we consider the memory and history of the Mohicans, a story from Leah about a child and a granddad connecting with their place on earth. We'll hear that story now.
Granddad's Prayers of the Earth by Douglas Woods. We have a story basket here this morning. And first we have this dark green cloth. It's outside in the world. This place is not too far from here and not too long ago. It's the story about a granddad and his grandchild. They were great friends. They liked to go walking in the woods. And one day, as they were walking, the child asked his granddad about prayers. Granddad paused and then pointed to the tallest trees in the forest. "Did you know," he said, "that trees can pray? They do. They reach for the sky. In the nighttime, they reach for the moon. And in the daytime, they reach for the sun and the clouds. Reaching for heaven is a prayer." And the child listened for the prayers of the trees, but he couldn't hear them. And then they continued walking until they found a big rock to sit on. Rocks pray too, said Granddad. Pebbles and boulders and old weathered hills, they are still and silent, and those are two important ways to pray. They continued walking, and they came by a small stream. Do streams pray too? The child asked. Yes, they do, said the granddad, and lakes and rivers and waters of all kinds. Sometimes they pray silently like the rocks, lying still and calm. Sometimes they pray with movement as they flow across the face of the earth. And there are more ways to pray, said Granddad. Tall grass prays as it waves its tall arms underneath the sky. And flowers pray as they breathe their sweetness into the air. Birds pray when it sings its song. All things of the world pray as they move across the land, or soar in the sky, or burrow into the earth. What about the prayers of people? Asked the child. Oh, people pray some of the most wonderful prayers of all, said Granddad. Bending down to smell a flower can be a prayer. Saying hello to the new day is one of the oldest prayers. Making music or painting a picture can be a prayer. Holding hands around a table with family and friends like we do, and remembering what holds us together and giving thanks, that's one of the greatest prayers. Sometimes people pray when they are sad or sick or lonely and have a problem too big to carry by themselves. They may say words they have learned from their parents and grandparents, but often they find their own words. The important thing to remember is that the words will always be right if they come from the heart. It was time to go back home, but the child had one more question. Are our prayers answered, Granddad? Granddad smiled. Most prayers are not really questions. We pray because we are here in the world, not to change things. But praying can change us, and then the world is changed. Over the course of the years, the granddad and the child went for many walks for many years. The child listened for the prayers of the earth, but he was never sure if he heard them. And then one day, Granddad died. And no matter how hard the child prayed, his granddad didn't come back. He couldn't come back. So the child stopped praying for a long time, and his world seemed dark and lonely without his granddad in it. Until one day, and the child was a little older now, and he went for a walk in the woods. And he looked up at the tall branches swaying in the breeze. And he found a large rock to sit by. And he heard a stream in the distance and a bird in the tree. He heard prayers. The earth was praying just like his granddad said. And so the child joined in. Thank you for the tall trees and the flowing streams and the singing birds. And thank you for my granddad, said the child. And as he prayed, something changed. And for the first time in a long time, the world seemed just right. And that's the end of the story. And I wanted to share this with you in our Unitarian Universalist gathering because as Unitarian Universalists, we can explore praying in all kinds of ways. It can be out in nature listening. It can be in the little things that we do every day. And sometimes paying attention like that can make everything seem a little better.
Our spoken meditation comes from Joseph Bruschek, storyteller and writer from Greenfield Center, who claims Abenaki and Mohican ancestry. And we can hear in his words another interpretation of prayer that we'll use as our spoken meditation today.
Like wine, we give greetings to all things around us, to the wind whose breath is shared by all living beings, to the earth mother that is beneath our feet wherever we walk, to the sky above us who has within it the light of the sun in the day and the moon at night to remind us we are never alone. We give greetings and we give thanks to all of creation, for there are so many blessings that come to us, those of us who are in this great circle of life. Without those blessings, we could not continue. The water that we drink, we thank it each morning. We say, Olioni Nabi. The air that we breathe, we say to it as well, Olioni Wolomsin, wind which fills my breath, and also those of all living things around us. We who are human beings are small in the eye of the great Creator. Those who are part of that circle, those we know, those who are our relatives, those who are our friends, those we have not met, those of all colors, all languages, all ages. We are all together in one great circle. If we forget that circle, if that circle becomes broken, we become lost. And so I ask us all to join together our breath and our thoughts for each new day. For this day in particular, we come together, greeting and in thanks.
We don't have the original logs of Henry Hudson's voyage of 1609 up the Chattahoochee River that now bears his name. Thankfully, other writers writing at the time quoted from it. For that reason, we have this account of the first contact with Mohicans not far down the river from Albany. I crossed to the shore in one of their canoes with an old man who was the chief of the tribe, consisting of 40 men and 17 women. These I saw there in the house, well constructed of oak bark and arched in shape, with the appearance of having a vaulted ceiling. It contained a great quantity of maize and beans of the last year's harvest, and there nearby lay for the purposes of drying, enough to load 3 ships besides what was growing in the fields. On our coming near the house, 2 mats were spread out to sit upon, and immediately some food was served in well-made wooden containers. 2 men were dispatched at once with bows and arrows in quest of game, who soon after brought in a pair of pigeons which they had just shot. They likewise killed at once a fat dog and skinned it in great haste with shells that they took out of the water. They supposed that I would remain with them for the night, but I returned after a short time back on board the ship. The natives are a very good people, for when they saw that I would not remain, they supposed that I was afraid of their bows, and taking the arrows, they broke them into pieces and threw them into the fire. These friendly relations that started with this first encounter continued. Other contacts along the river hadn't been as friendly. Hudson said he'd be back. He was followed by more Dutch traders when they saw the beautiful furs that they were bringing back. This began a long, friendly relationship between the Mohican and the Dutch that lasted past the English takeover of the Hudson Valley. In preparation for this service, I've been on a quest to learn more about the beginnings of that relationship. Unfortunately, that has not been very easy. Part of the problem is there weren't great numbers of Mohicans there to begin with. Like all indigenous peoples of this area, they had no written language. Their wisdom was passed through oral tradition. Their elders were the repositories of their history, culture, and religion. In the 1630s, European diseases swept through the area around Fort Orange, the first Dutch trading post set up in the 1620s. Many died, often the elders, threatening those memory banks. So much was lost. Another factor in the losses of the Mohican history and culture were the Dutch themselves. Early contacts were businessmen interested in trading trinkets for furs and making a lot of money. They had no idea of a disciplined study of the peoples they were encountering. We know so much more about cultures that were encountered by missionaries. Missionaries studied and documented what they found to help them convert people to Christianity. They were hardly unbiased in what they recorded, but at least they wrote something down for us. The Dutch didn't keep notes. They kept meticulous transaction ledgers. Yet there was also another side to the Dutch approach to colonization. At least they had respect for the Mohican people, desiring to be fair in their trading. Unlike Columbus, they didn't try to enslave them. That fairness was especially true when that came to acquiring land for settlement. They sought chiefs and leaders to do land transactions and kept careful track of these transactions, establishing land rights. I doubt the Mohicans got the best deal for their land, since they didn't have a sense of land ownership beyond controlling regions for hunting against other tribes' use. The Dutch didn't just claim the land because they discovered it. They acknowledged that it belonged to Mohicans and negotiated with them for tracts to build farms and towns. They sought peaceful coexistence with their neighbors that supported free trading. The first Mohicans recording their own heritage, practices, and culture began after 150 years of contact with Europeans and the loss of so many elders. Those words were recorded by those subjugated by white folks. Their written records served the purpose of defending themselves against removal from their lands that began in the early 1800s. By the middle of the 19th century, the Mohican and Munsee, consolidated together, got displaced several times and ended up in a reservation in Wisconsin. What we do know about Mohicans is they shared a great deal with the surrounding tribes. They were not part of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. They had a lot of conflict in the 17th century with the Mohawks, who were the eastern edge of it along the Mohawk River. The Mohawk eventually drove Mohicans to the Stockbridge area of western Massachusetts, becoming known as the Stockbridge Indians. But originally, Mohicans settled along the upper Hudson River from the Catskills up past Albany to Lake George. They got the nickname River Indians because their villages were along the Hudson River. Their settlements were not large, each 100 more or less. As others did, they built longhouses and stored their reserves of food in them, as well as buried food in pits. Like other northeastern tribes, they grew corn, beans, and squash, the three sisters, the staple of their diet, supplemented by fish and game. The abundant runs of seasonal fish coming up the river to spawn meant they had plenty of food. Spring floods of low-lying river islands fertilized their crops each year. I wonder if their peaceful nature came from the river, which abundantly supplied their needs. They spoke their own language with two dialects, one for the east of the Hudson and one for the west. The river separated people even back then. The little we know of their cultural practices suggests they were matrilineal. That has been deduced from the practice of children staying with their mother's family if the husband and wife separate. Ethnographers also think their small communities settled disputes through long discussions and a consensus process. While there were sagamores and chiefs, they exercised little authority. The time authority was consolidated is when they went to war and appointed a war chief to lead them. That person's power ended with the end of the conflict. What destabilized this peaceful coexistence with nature, supported by the river's generous resources, was the introduction of the Dutch fur trade. That sparked demand for goods the Dutch could offer. Goods like metal pots, knives, guns, gunpowder, bullets, clothing, and alcohol. Desire for these goods, or even more important, the need for them for self-defense, changed their lives irreversibly. When your enemies have guns, you now need them too. So that's a little about the Mohicans, but not a lot. So many stories have been lost, so much of their religious practice. As we seek to restore the ecosystems disrupted by European settlement, indigenous cultures can be a storehouse of knowledge. So how do we connect with the ancestors of this land we know so little about? Let's recall that wisdom story again. The child asked his granddad about prayer. The child didn't have an experience of what prayer is, as his granddad described it. Listening to trees pray, I imagine the child being a little confused. Probably he had in mind someone kneeling, hands together and head bowed, not tree branches moving in the wind, not sitting on a rock or hearing the movement of the river. This could be a different understanding of prayer. In the direct personal experience of praying as nature prays, a new perception could happen, a new understanding could grow. We don't and can't have the stories, the tradition, and the sacred practices of the Mohican peoples directly transmitted to us over a 400 years bridge of time. What we still do have is the same rivers, the same topography of the land, the same seasons, more or less. The soil has much in common with the original soil. Many plants remain, though many of them might have been lost and invasive exotics introduced. Many insects, birds, and animals remain as well. We can be in relationship with the same place they knew. Not exactly the same, of course. They didn't have roads or cars, electric lights, or tall buildings. Yet there is still much indigenous knowing we have access to. There is still interactions between plant and animal life that has been going on for thousands of years here. Indigenous peoples tapped maple trees, and so do we. We can learn to honor, respect, and revere the land as they did. Maybe not in their language or in their rituals, but we can rediscover some of what they discovered. This is the Unitarian Universalist way. We are not dependent on a unique transmission from a solitary godly person we must follow exclusively. We are not bound to a law inscribed in clay tablets received on a mountaintop. We do not believe there are magical phrases and words that must be said and believed which will punch our ticket to heaven. We are truth-seeking and meaning-seeking people here and now. We are doing it in a community and supporting each other in our individual journey. We are willing to learn from each other as well as teach each other what we learn and know. In a way, we may have access to and retrieve some of the ways and wisdom of indigenous peoples through direct experience. May we use this day and the holiday for that purpose. May we learn from the Mohicans who came before us, benefit from their heritage, and include it in our own. May we give thanks for their hospitality that opened the possibility that we might live here today. So be it. An important way we celebrate life each Sunday is by offering an opportunity to practice generosity. Members and friends support our congregation with an annual pledge paid throughout the year. Another way to support the good work of our congregation is by making a generous contribution via one of the options shown on the next slide. You can click on the tiny URL link in the chat window to contribute, or you can send a text to the number shown on the screen. The examples on the slide show how to label your text to indicate the amount and the purpose or intent of your gift. Not sure if we ever got our Facebook friends in, but we'll have to say goodbye to them. And if we do have them, consider joining us on Zoom next time by visiting Albany UU. And our offertory, Roots and Wings by Coco Love Alcorn, will be performed by Matt Meyer on drums. And he sings too, I think.
Lately I've been thinking about roots and wings. Lately I've been thinking how I need these things. I need roots in the ground to strong. Wings on my back so I can fly on home. Lately I've been thinking about roots and wings. Lately I've been thinking how I need these things. Roots in the ground to keep me strong. Wings on my back so I can fly on home. Lately I've been thinking about roots and wings. Lately I've been thinking how I need these things. I need roots in the ground to keep me strong. Wings on my back so I can fly on home. Lately I've been thinking about roots and wings. Lately I've been thinking how I need these things. I need roots in the ground to keep me strong. Wings on my back so I can fly on home. Lately I've been thinking about roots and wings. Lately I've been thinking how I need these things. I need roots in the ground to keep me strong. Wings on my back so I can fly on home. Lately I've been thinking about roots and wings. Lately I've been thinking how I need these things. I need roots in the ground to keep me strong. Wings on my back so I can fly on home. I need roots in the ground to keep me strong. Wings on my back so I can fly on home. Wings on my back so I can fly on home. Wings on my back so I can fly on home.
We enjoy welcoming guests and visitors to our service. If you are a guest or visitor and would like to tell us who you are and where you're from, you can click on the blue raise hand symbol in the participant window. Our technician will unmute you and invite you to speak. You may also, or instead, click on the visitor link you'll find now in the chat window. Chris, is there anybody in the chat window that wants to introduce themselves?
I don't see anybody at the moment.
Okay, well, thank you and welcome to all who joined us today. If anyone would like to learn more about our congregation or Unitarian Universalism, you can find that in the participant window, someone with welcome before their name. You can reach out to that person privately in the chat window now or after the service. Sam, unless you can create the host and the breakout rooms from your end, Chris is unable to do that. I sent you a chat, but I don't know whether you received it. Okay, so unfortunately, we do have a technological problem, so we will not be able to create the breakout room for community greetings. Maybe everybody can just sort of wave to each other. And write in your chats if you want to get a hold of somebody. We apologize, but sometimes we don't have any control of that. So moving into our quiet time, this is the time we set aside in our service for sharing significant personal milestones in our lives. There are three ways that you can share a joy or sorrow. The first option is to type your joy or sorrow in the chat window. Please put the words "read aloud" at the beginning of your message if you would like us to do that. Please also consider connecting privately in the chat with a pastoral care associate. Today, you may contact Phil Rich or myself, Randy Rosette. You may identify them by looking in your participant window. The second option is to click the blue raise hand symbol in the participant window. Our technician will unmute you and invite you to speak your joy or sorrow. The third option is to submit a joy or sorrow using our website during the week before a Sunday service. We will begin by reading those, then we'll hear the spoken joys and sorrows, followed by the ones with read aloud in front of them in the chat. Chris, can you read the joys and sorrows you received during the week?
Yes, we begin with Betsy Wright, who lets us know that during the high windstorm that we had, my huge 100-year-old oak blew over onto my house. Fortunately, Fred and I were out leaf peeking, and we also have wonderful neighbors, and our old frame house held up when I am told new construction may not have. There is much damage, however, so this will occupy me for some time. Many, many of you have called and emailed. Your kindnesses touch me deeply. I have a new appreciation for what others are going through. However, I don't need anything. When I do, I will let you know. Having a beloved community behind me is so valuable. And we hear from Sharon Babila that her brother Craig died unexpectedly earlier this week. Please hold the Babila family, especially niece Shannon and nephew Ryan, close to your heart during this difficult time. And also from Sharon, we have received news that Patsy Patrick, a longtime member of this congregation, died yesterday morning. That concludes the read alouds.
Any hands, Chris?
Nobody has raised their hand that I can see.
Okay, then I will start. John Shoemaker has a couple concerns. First of all, he's very concerned about a friend who lost his job and his health insurance and his home. Also, John and Donna Dolan mention that they are sad over the death of their sweet pet and cat, Lacey. Bear with me for a moment. Alita says that she is joyful because she is at home here right now. Mary Applegate says she's thinking a lot today about our congregation's dear friend, Peggy Slocum, who died in early February at age 99 and a half. Her 100th birthday would have been in a week from today. Her Zoom memorial service is this afternoon at 3 p.m. Details were in yesterday's congregation update email, so please join if you can. I think that's all.
Okay, we have one more with a blue hand, so I'm going to ask Karen DeWillers to unmute and share your concern.
I guess I'm unmuted. I don't know.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm hoping 3 is the charm. Since we're quarantined, I have fallen 3 times in my home. I had a pretty massive concussion on the second one. Haven't broken any bones yet. Yay! but I keep falling, and I'm going to get a fall detection device because I live alone. But 3's got to be the charm. I'm not allowing myself to fall any more times.
All right. Thank you, Karen. I think that's it.
For the joys and sorrows that remain unspoken, let us hold all that we've heard and felt deep in our hearts.
For a prayer of affirmation, I heard that this week, many of us heard that Louise Gluck got the Nobel Prize for Literature. And she is pretty well known in the Albany area. So I thought I would share one of her poems for us. And this poem is Averno, which I want to explain what Averno means. It refers to a small crater lake that's 10 miles west of Naples, Italy. Was regarded by the ancient Romans as the entrance to the underworld. And Louise wrote this, I'm guessing, about the age of 62. Let us turn inward to reflect on her words. You die when your spirit dies. Otherwise, you live. You may not do a good job of it, but you go on, something you have no choice about. Well, I tell this to my children. They pay no attention. The old people, they think, this is what they always do, talk about things no one can see to cover up all the brain cells they're losing. They wink at each other. Listen to the old one talking about the spirit because he can't remember anymore the word for chair. It is terrible to be alone. I don't mean to live alone, to be alone, where no one hears you. I remember the word for chair. I want to say, I'm just not interested anymore. I wake up thinking, you have to prepare. Soon the spirit will give up. All the chairs in the world won't help you. So be it. And let us sing our last song, Ancient Mother. And we have another creative rendition of it by Elena Karpov. I hope. It's a traditional Navajo prayer, and it's arranged and led by Elena Karpov. So join in.
Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears. Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears. Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears. Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears.
And let us extinguish our chalice with the words you'll see. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And we have a beautiful benediction by Joseph Bruschek.
As we leave this place, I ask that we remember to walk on this land carefully and with kindness. As we look around, I ask that we see the light of the Creator in the eyes of everyone we meet, and we do not turn our gaze away from them. As we continue on our journey, I pray that we, all of us, may always keep our hands open. And though we may not right now join each other's hands physically, we may join them in spirit and in kindness. And we may, as we continue to walk on the gift of this beautiful earth, remain in balance and help others to find their balance with us. Oleoni Katsino ask, thank you, great Creator, Om Giskak, for this day that we share together. And may we continue to share beyond this.
And our thanks go out to our ushers today, Kathy Harris, Dawn Dana, Tammy Hathaway, and Jean Poppy. Our pastoral care associates, Randy Rosette and Phil Rich. Our welcomer, who was today Elizabeth Barbarian, and our musicians, Lena Karpoff and Matt Meyer. Our office support was Sapphire Correa, and technical support today by Chris Jensen. And we do have a few announcements, I believe, out there. You can see them